Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady. We're Karen's mistake, regular people for employees, and it's absolutely terrible. And in today's episode, a Karen picks a fight with an army sergeant's wife, guys, and she learns a lesson she won't forget. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. To start off, I'm an American. A few years ago, I lived in Brazil to study, and I was taking a weekend trip to a national park on the border with Argentina. I ended up going to the Argentinian side and was just playing tourist. And here's some important background. I speak primarily English, I speak a little bit Portuguese, and absolutely no Spanish. In fact, I can barely string a sentence in Spanish together without just throwing in Portuguese and hoping it works out. The other thing to note is that I'm American. I'm ethnically Portuguese and Polish with black hair, so I do often get mistaken for Brazilian. So on to the story. I was hanging out at a bench in the shade by the waterfalls and just helped some Brazilian tourists with directions when I was approached by a very American tourist, a Karen. She was wearing New Balance tennis shoes, visor, capris, the works. The woman's trying to communicate with me in incredibly broken Spanish. I think it's awesome that she's trying to speak the local language, so props there. I then interrupt her to let her know that I don't speak Spanish, and she looks at me like I stabbed her grandma. The woman goes off and says, "Of course you speak Spanish, don't lie." And then she repeats what she said in Spanish again. Now I really have no idea what the lady wants, and the group of Brazilians around me are also confused. And also kind of laughing that out of everyone, I'm getting the rude tourist treatment. I interrupted again to let her know that I'm also American and I don't speak Spanish. And this set her off again. She yells at me and says, "Don't you lie? And why do you assume I'm American?" I tell her, well, I think based on the fact that I'm American, I can spot another American accent. The woman completely ignores what I said, and she says, "I heard you giving directions, so do your job and tell me where I need to go." I'm now figuring out that this lady wanted directions, and somehow she thinks a girl sitting in a sundress with a bikini top is the local employee she needs to get them from. I tell her I gave directions in Portuguese to the spot I just came from. I don't work here and I don't speak Spanish. Karen says to me, "You're clearly not American. You are Latino." So at this point I realize that she's fully crazy, and I decide I'm going to exclusively speak in Portuguese from now on. So I explained to her in the fastest dialect I can manage that I don't want to help her, and she's asked me to not speak English, so I will only be speaking in Portuguese, and she should also ask somebody that cares. She then yells at me and says, "See, you do speak Spanish." My friends just died laughing and they all start mocking her. She then starts noticing that a few were wearing the Brazil national soccer shirts, and I could see it starting to click. But she threw me for a curveball and she said, "You Brazilians are such liars. Shame on you for pretending not to be from here and claiming to be American when you're not." I just got up and walked away. I still feel the eternal facepalm I experienced that day. You know, after reading so many of these posts about people's interactions, it still boggles my mind how some people are like that. "Ma'am, I'm not an employee." "Yes, you are." "Ma'am, I'm also not from this country." "Yes, you are. Stop lying." "Ma'am, I also don't speak the language you think I can speak." "Yes, you do." Like, what in the world? Clearly, there's no winning with this woman. And honestly, I don't get why she didn't speak to OP in English in the first place. Like, if I were a tourist in a foreign country where English wasn't the primary language, I would have been ecstatic that somebody spoke English, right? But I guess the Karens, they really love to embrace it. Stop speaking English to me. Let's just try to communicate with my broken Spanish. That'll get us somewhere. Alright, so for some background, I'm a 19-year-old girl and I'm less than 5 feet tall. I also have autism, so I'm very bad at talking to other people and socializing in general. So even friendly or mundane interactions are stressful for me, but they're nothing compared to this. I still live at home, and one day we need some baking ingredients. So my parents sent me off to walk half a mile to the supermarket to get me out of the house. So I put on a white hat and a navy blue coat. I only mention this as it looks absolutely nothing like the uniform worn by the employees at this chain of supermarkets. I then set off, and in half an hour I was there. It was at this point I get a text from my mom asking if I could also pick up some dish soap. I was looking over the different brand names and store brands before the encounter began. There I was, standing there, holding a basket full of items in it, clearly looking at other items, and I'm wearing something that didn't even remotely resemble the green jackets worn by staff, when I felt a finger tapping me on the shoulder. The woman says, "Excuse me." I then turn around to see who it was. I kind of expected it to be a familiar face who had recognized me and decided to say hello, so when I saw a complete stranger looming over me, I didn't know what to do. The woman towered over me and she had sunglasses on her forehead. I'd been caught off guard by her, so I just kind of stutter, That's when Karen says, "I need assistance. Where did you guys move the condiments to?" Now, for some reason, it hadn't clicked that this woman had mistaken me for an employee. So I say to her, I don't know. The woman says, "You don't know? What do you mean you don't know?" She said this in a very confrontational tone. At this point, I was terrified, considering even talking to family members I don't see too often, or real retail workers, can make me stressed out. So my dumb brain decides the best course of action was to just back away and leave this lady to her own devices. So I turn and start to scoot away when suddenly I get pulled back hard by my hood. It was choking me, and it did make me drop my basket, which made a large clatter that disturbed the whole shop. It also hurt a lot because the woman did pull with a lot of force. The woman just pulled me back, and then she turned me around, grabbed me by my shoulders, and she screamed at me saying, "Where are you going? I asked you a question." At this point, I start tearing up, trying to pull away and run for my life, but this woman had this iron grip on me, and she wasn't letting go. Thankfully, two of the employees, one of whom was a manager, had run to see what the commotion was about, and turned into the aisle to see a woman violently holding me. The manager screams, Hey, stop! What's going on here?" And the woman had the audacity to say, "This staff member was extremely unhelpful to me. I need help finding the condiments." The manager tells Karen that person is not a staff member, let her go. And I guess hearing that, the gears clicked for her, as she loosened her grip on me. I then ran right past the manager and the other employee, not even picking up my basket. I was just scared and confused, and I wanted to get out of there, so I ran through the store. That's when a security guard, who must have saw me running out and thought I might have been stealing, catches up with me, and he asked what's going on. I didn't want to explain what happened out of embarrassment, but I did tell him that I was grabbed and hurt by a woman who I didn't know. The guy was nice enough to escort me back, and he told me he would help me get the stuff I need. While in the store, I heard the woman screaming. She was shouting something about how they'd lost a customer. Thankfully, she didn't see me though. I just wanted to get in and out, but I was stopped by the manager, who asked if I wanted to press charges or something along those lines. I said no. I just grabbed everything quickly, paid, and left. In the future, I'll probably wear a big flashing sign on my back saying "not an employee" because I don't know how I could make it any more obvious. And I don't know if I could go through that again. Guys, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Some people deserve a swift chop to the neck or something for grabbing others like that. And the fact that Karen got away with it means she'll probably do it again because there are no consequences to her actions. I was at a commissary once. Couple years in, Army Private First Class, about 2007. I'm always willing to help people if they're nice, but I could tell when someone just wanted to take advantage of me, or abuse their own imagined position. Anyways, I'm picking up some microwave meals in my army uniform, when this woman comes over and she asked if I can help her get something down from the top shelf. I say sure. I get it down, hand it to her, she says thanks, and I say no problem. Have a great day. As I start to turn around, she says, "Wait, we're not done yet." And then she pulls out this long-ass list of things and she says, "If you'll just start working on this for me, I'll meet you over by the deli in 20 minutes. I'm thinking, what the F? I tell her, I'm sorry, but I really don't have the time for that. However, I'm sure one of the staff could help you if you can't find something. And hearing me say that, Karen mode activated. The woman says to me, "Oh, so you're refusing to help me. I can't believe this. What if I order you? Do you have any idea who I am? I'm Captain So-and-so's wife, and you will help me find these things, or you will get an Article 13. That's when I said something like, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but first of all, you're not an officer or even in the army. You can't order me to do anything. Second of all, your husband's not in my chain of command, so he really can't order me to do anything. And lastly, is this really how you want to treat people who try to help you? If I called up your husband and told him about this encounter, would he be happy about it? Without even knowing the man, I somehow really doubt it, so I'm just gonna finish my shopping now, and if you need help with yours, I suggest talking to a staff member that works here. Until then, I hope the rest of your day is as pleasant as you are. I then turned around, went back to my cart, and I left her standing there, with a list in hand, face nearly purple, and she's staring at me. Everyone nearby heard our little exchange, and a few did snicker at the idiocy of it all. I never saw her again or even heard anything else about it, but I like to think that she learned a little something about herself that day. How unimportant she really is. Guys, it is so cringe to hear people doing stuff like this. And honestly, I guarantee she didn't learn anything. I guarantee that still to this day, unless she got her husband in trouble with her attitude, she probably thinks she's hot stuff and still uses his rank to intimidate people. Before I start the story, I have to tell you about my husband. My husband is a very hardworking gentleman, an army veteran of 2 conflicts, and although he has a very serious and almost hostile demeanor, think resting bitch face, he's actually a big teddy bear, quick enough to make a joke or pull a prank, and easy to laugh. He's also very protective of me. Now, since I'm not here to gush on him, I'll go on. So we were out getting groceries last week, and as we were checking out, I was bagging up all of our stuff because the store now requires that you bag your own goods if you bring your own bags. That's no big deal. He pays, and I stay to help a very elderly lady behind him bag her groceries and put them in her cart. We then offered to help her put them in her car. The woman shuffles away from the register, and I move to follow. And as I turn away, I hear behind me, "Well, where the hell do you think you're going?" That's when I turn, and I see a very angry-looking woman glaring at me. I told her politely that I didn't work at the store, and I had just helped the elderly lady to be polite, and now I was leaving with my husband to go home. I had never met an American Karen before, so I thought this would be the end of it. I turn to walk away, and all of a sudden, I feel a vice grip on my arm. The woman shouts at me and says, "Don't you be lazy, do your job and bag my groceries." Now, I didn't even have time to respond. The woman had barely finished speaking when my husband wrenches her hand off of me and he was yelling in her face. This was the first time in 10 years we've been together that I saw the old soldier come out. His nose was like 3 inches from hers, and his voice was loud and frightening. He screams at Karen and says, "Who the F do you think you are? How dare you put your hands on my wife? She told you she doesn't work here. Are you too effing stupid to understand simple English? So go pay for your crap, bag your own damn groceries, and don't you dare utter another effing sound." And oh boy, the silence after that was intense. A store full of people could hear a pin drop. And the look on Karen's face wasn't even angry, it was of pure terror. The woman shuffles back to her aisle and she waited for the cashier. My husband then went to the old lady and he said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry you had to hear all that. I apologize if my language was offensive. I hope you'll still allow us to help you load your groceries into your car." It was surreal, like my husband had just flipped on a switch and then flipped it back off. Also, we got chased down by the store manager who suggested that we could be banned because of the yelling and bad language. My husband just shrugged and said they'd better ban Karen too for assaulting me, and that there's other grocery stores in town. We just go to this one because it's close. We didn't get banned in the end. Freaking awesome how Karen got a taste of her own medicine. And guys, this is exactly what I wish would happen every single time a Karen goes off on a customer or employee, or even grab someone. A big scary dude just needs to straight up start yelling in their face. And you know what, it's also very rare that I say this, but honestly in this instance, I think Karen might have actually learned her lesson that day. This happened almost 10 years ago, but I was recently talking with friends about the most ridiculous things that's happened to us, and this memory popped up. So about me is I'm legally blind. I have been for pretty much forever. We found out about my eye condition when I was 11, and from that point on, I had extra classes and programs teaching me how to live with really poor or no vision. In my senior year of high school, I had one last sort of blind life boot camp. It was pretty simple, with most classes being on stuff like cooking, laundry, cleaning, and other stuff. It was mostly geared to helping newly blind people adapt, so I would finish early a lot and wind up going to the grocery store to pick up dinner. At the time, I also traveled with my service dog, Mikey, a big black lab. He wore a special harness, and it was pretty clear to anyone with half a brain that he wasn't a normal pet. Usually, classes didn't have any sort of dress code, but on this day though, it was self-advocacy day, and we were supposed to do mock job interviews to talk about the subject of when to disclose you have a disability. So because it was more of a formal thing, I and the other students were wearing more professional looking stuff. I was in a blue button shirt and khakis. I finished early, and I went to the grocery store to get dinner, as usual. I was putting a bag of frozen chicken patties into my basket when I hear a voice behind me. The person said, "It's about time they made you dress more professional here. All employees look like slobs all the time." Now, with what vision I have at the time, I see the person in front of me. She was a bit taller than me. She was an older woman who I'll call Karen. I then turned around and said, "Sorry?" Karen repeats herself and said, "I said I'm glad they started making you wear more decent clothing here. Most of the time, you all look like you get dressed in the dark." At that I laugh and I say, "Well, I kind of do." The woman said, "I didn't mean that as a joke, and why the hell would you do that?" I tell her I really don't have a choice. Matching colors isn't my strong suit. By this point, I thought the sunglasses and the seeing eye dog were enough of a clue, so I start to walk away. It hadn't occurred to me yet that she thought I worked there. The Karen says, "Well, what does that mean? Hey, don't you walk away from me, I'm not done with you yet." The woman then does something that I never expected. She proceeds to grab my basket, and I jerked my arm away, hard. I could feel Mikey jump because I was tense and because of the sound of the basket hitting the floor. My basket was also kind of full, so a jar of pickles rolls out on Karen's foot. The woman then shouts, "Ow! Look what you did, I'll have you fired." And that's when I realized that she thought I worked there. Not the rudeness, not the assault, but the threats to take a job I didn't have. So I start to shout back and I say, "Get the F away from me, I don't work here. Don't you touch me again, or I'll call the effing cops." It was loud enough that everyone in the echoey store probably heard. All the chatter from the other customers and employees died down pretty quick. Karen, then carried away by the momentum of her power trip, continues ranting and threatening me, and she followed me as I walked away. Meanwhile, my dog's pulling as hard as he can to get me away from what he thinks is danger. I even left my basket of food behind. At some point, Karen ceases following me, and I left the store without buying anything. I didn't go back to that store again. Like, I don't know who she was or why she felt entitled to being able to harass me, but I hope she choked on whatever she bought there next. So listen guys, this might be one of the most clueless Karens out there. Like, I could see maybe someone ignoring the sunglasses because there's plenty of reasons someone might be working and wearing sunglasses. But how do you see somebody holding a shopping basket with an animal beside them, one that's in a special harness, and assume they're a friggin' employee? And the nerve of that woman to keep harassing OP after OP lost it on her. Guys, I would have called the cops at that point or something. Get that woman arrested. This story happened when I was late teens, about 17 years old and going through an emo phase, so my hair was dyed black. Also, before I get to the place this happened at, I'm just gonna say that I have absolutely zero Asian blood flowing through my vein, and my ancestry tree looks like a highlighted map of Europe with a couple of spots missing. So at the time, I was dating this girl from 2 towns over. The girl and I had been dating for about 4 months when she decides to introduce me to her grandparents. We meet on a Saturday. I dressed up in some of the nicest clothes I had, which was a pair of black dress pants and a black polo shirt and a white tie. Her grandparents decide to treat her and I to lunch at one of those Chinese buffet-style restaurants. I was doing great with the grandparents and I was enjoying my meal. I then went up to grab a second plate when all of a sudden I hear, "Excuse me, sir," from behind. I didn't really pay attention because why would I? I'm an unemployed high school student and no one at that point had called me sir. I continued grabbing my food when all of a sudden I hear the same voice say, "Excuse me, waiter, I'm talking to you." That's when I feel a hard smack on my back. And this, my friends, was my first ever encounter with a Karen. I'm shocked, so I say in a very rude tone, what? I've also never liked people touching me without warning. The woman then said to me, "What did you just say to me, you little idiot? Don't what me? If you work here, at least be nice to the customers and ask what I need." I say to her, "I'm giving you attitude because you smacked me out of nowhere." The lady then had the nerve to say, "Well, if you would have just turned around, I wouldn't have had to do that now, would I? My family needs you to grab our dirty plates and get us refills on water." And that's when I caught on to it. I tell her, "Lady, I do not work here." She then dug her finger into my chest and she says, "What's this then? People don't come to a cheap Chinese buffet dressed like how you are. You are wearing a uniform." I just start getting frustrated at that point. I tell her I do not work here, and then went back to trying to get some food. The lady had the nerve to shove me with one hand. At this point, a bunch of people who are in line for food saw what happened, and they start trying to separate me from the lady. The woman then had the nerve to play victim, saying that she's only pushing me because I started it, and I assaulted her out of nowhere. I just walked back to my table when I saw staff come out to talk to her. Thankfully, she didn't sit anywhere near us. The table I sat at was behind a wall, thankfully, so my girlfriend and grandparents didn't see a thing. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode where a Karen boss gives orders and they destroy their career. It's such a wild story. So go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.